session or the subsession is appropriate to me in view of the kind of farmers I represent. My constituencies are actually mainly small-scale farmers, 80%. As far as regional farm organizations are concerned in the region, that is the continent of Africa mainly, we have actually openly committed ourselves to commercialization of small-scale agriculture. In fact, in 2004, we actually came up with a Pretoria Declaration where we agreed to actually commercialize small-scale agriculture. And modernization was actually key, but for us to be able to commercialize small-scale agriculture, it's actually important that we are actually able to do business, and markets actually become very, very important. If you look at our business plans as regional farmer networks, the inclination is actually towards commercialization of small-scale agriculture. So we are talking transformation of small-scale agriculture, and this is very important for us. But in talking commercialization, we take recognition of the fact that productivity in our regions is actually very low, especially amongst the small-scale farmers. And for us to get to market, we need to actually increase productivity so that we can actually have surpluses for the market. But again, productivity alone is actually not sufficient. It is important that we also manage efficiency so that we can actually be competitive at our own domestic markets and also the regional markets. And research has a very important role to actually play in actually making it possible for us to be productive and also efficiency for purposes of actually being competitive. Now, but currently what we see in small-scale agriculture, as we try to actually talk about commercialization, there is need for at least motivation, at least some catalysts to be able to actually, catalyze production among the small-scale farmers. And for us, we think markets are actually a very important incentive, and therefore we are actually talking currently as regional farm organizations about, enhancing productivity through trade, because with that, we can actually be able to do that. So, but definitely, as I said, we need a lot of support from different partners to be able to do that. Now, for the small-scale farmers to be able to link with profitable markets, there is actually need for a kind of multidisciplinary approach, cross-sectoral approach, meaning that there has to be partnership. So for us, actually, partnership is actually very important, and I think this theme is correct, that we actually need partnership to be able to actually link small farmers to market. So the background paper that you actually have has done a good job in doing the analysis, and also clearly bringing out issues that we need to address. And we have actually a panel of actually very capable speakers here that will actually be able to get us into the depth of some of these issues, plus you participants, because definitely you also have your own capacities that will actually enable us actually get into these issues in greater details. But what we actually know is that things have actually changed. Markets have actually changed. Yeah, the consumers have actually changed. And even in Africa, because of urbanization and also changes in income. There is actually a growing power of agribusiness, isolating small-scale farmers and actually pushing them to the bottom of the value chain, where profits are actually very small. There are trade barriers. Some of them we cannot stay away from, especially food safety and standards. So again, we actually need to actually make sure that we actually connect with all these. But there are also many non-trade barriers, especially around the regional markets. And definitely we need to actually find ways of dealing with all these. But we know that there are dynamics out there, and we need to actually find ways of small farmers, linking up with these different dynamics, and also ensuring that they can actually be able to participate in that fully changed market environment. Now, but currently, if you look keenly at most developing countries and small farmers, the available market still remains the same. The spot market that used to be there, or markets that have a chain of intermediaries. People in between the small farmer and the actual market. I'm happy in that we are holding this very important subsession at a time when the world is actually celebrating the World Cooperative Year. In fact, I just came from Rwanda, where I was actually invited by the International Cooperative Alliance to actually celebrate this year with them. As we generate innovations that will help link small farmers to markets, we need to actually establish very strong working partnership with farm organizations and especially producer cooperatives. In fact, even we lobby organizations in the region have actually welcomed cooperative movements in our own regions into our membership. My own organization has actually 7 national cooperative alliances that are actually members of the East African Farmers Federation. Now, this is important, especially if we genuinely want to link small farmers to business, to markets. It is also important to note that cooperatives are just not small businesses. They are huge businesses. In fact, when I listened to presentations in Rwanda, it was actually brought to my attention that annually they're actually handling a business of $1.6 trillion US. That is big business, and all owned by the membership itself. Yeah, again, you know, cooperatives are just not about money. No, they're just not about money. But they're actually about people. They're actually people-based. And therefore, they're actually about livelihoods. So cooperatives, to me, they're actually the most important and ideal business model for small producers, and especially in linking them to profitable markets. So, and I think as we discuss, we need to actually find ways of ensuring that we link researchers to this very important model that is actually key in actually getting the small-scale farmers participate in markets. Now, I would like to take you to some issues that are captured by the GCARD roadmap. And these issues actually relate very well to the topic we're actually discussing, the theme. It actually came out very clear that in the roadmap, but there is actually a poor linkage between research processes and development agenda in particular. The wider and enabling environment, investments, mechanisms of rural development, including markets. They are actually seen opportunities, all right, but they have actually not been inclusive and also well taken advantage of to the benefit of the small-scale farmers. If you look at research for development, actors should review and seek to improve alignments. And I think for us, this is actually very important. And we need strengthening and capacities to be able to move on. So I think this issue is actually very important. So as far as GCARD2 is concerned, we actually aim to identify, through this session, to identify ways of generating more coherent evidence-based perspectives, building on practice-based innovations and experiences. And I think for this is actually very important. And in this session, we need to come out very, very specifically. Now, when it comes to you as participants, I think we have expectations, and it's very clear. We expect full interaction from your end so that we can actually be able to exchange experiences and also be able to identify some of you as very relevant partners for us to be able to move and strengthen smallholder linkages to markets. Now, as for the speakers, the panelists, I think we expect a lot from you. So that we can actually be able to combine with other strengths we actually have from the participants to be able to actually get this particular issue very well elaborated and discussed. I think because of the time factor, I do not actually want to go into a lot of one presentation and elaborations. I think I have the capacity here to do that from the speakers. And I would like to now take this very important opportunity and space to introduce to you the speakers that we actually have for this very important session. And I'm glad we have, we're waiting for the lady. She's actually here. so that's okay. We have with us on the extreme end, we have Karen Brooks. I think she is quite familiar with most of you. She is from IFPRI. She is program manager of the new CGIAR research program, that is CLP2, entitled Policies, Institutions, and Markets to Strengthen Food Security and Incomes for the Rural Poor. Very, very, very relevant for this particular session. And we shall actually be expecting her to really outline the work of her program to all of us and provide examples of innovations initiated under this particular program. Although it's actually a bit early, but I'm sure there will actually be issues that she can actually bring on board. So welcome, and I think that's very important. With us, we also have Ruben. Ruben is actually on my right. Ruben is from Ali Fruit. Ali Fruit is an acronym from Spanish. A longer name. He is actually CEO of. Of a productive partnership coordination unit, and he will actually present an innovative alliance between his organization, publicly funded by research, and smallholder producers who are working together to address specific challenges facing smallholder, and especially linking them to inclusive markets. We have Lorenzo. Lorenzo is, very good. Lorenzo is here with us. Lorenzo is actually from Peru. He is CEO of a national coffee farm organization in Peru. He will actually explain how a lobby agenda has been developed by a group of economic farmers organizations and led by the very good coffee cooperatives to influence the agricultural policy agenda to enhance smallholder market access. So I think, as I said, we have cooperators on board. And beyond that, we actually have Ton, from Wageningen University, Research Center in Netherlands, and program manager of the Empowering Small Farmers in the Markets program known as ISFIM. He will outline the program, drawing out key generic lessons from work in 10 countries on farm organizations, research partnerships, on strengthening farm organizations-led research for advocacy. So welcome, that's very nice. And we have also with us here, I think the lead has come. She is Sherin. Excuse me for the pronunciation. It might not actually come out very well. And I think she also actually be making a presentation. And as far as she is concerned, she actually comes from Costa Rica, coordinator of women's farmer organizations in Costa Rica. So we are gender sensitive. We'll outline how women have been mobilized to enable them actually access markets better. I think that would be very interesting. We have Yosei. Good. Yeah, Yosei is actually he is actually from a cooperative movement, that is CAF, that is Federation of Agricultural Cooperatives in Uruguay. He will present examples of innovations, processes in the cooperative sector, and how these can inform the national innovation policy systems in Uruguay. So I think that for us, it will actually be very important. And I think without further ado, I would like to invite speakers. I know I will start with Karen Brooks. And my problem is actually time. So we are trying to stick to 5 minutes. I know it is difficult if I was in your position, but I'm sure you actually work around it and make sure that you actually communicate with all of us. So welcome, Karen.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to all of you who came to the session. Thanks to Felicity for organizing it. I've heard my instructions that I should stick to 5 minutes. I can't actually guarantee that I'll do that because I have some very interesting material to present, and but I will be as efficient as possible. As the chair said, my name is Karen Brooks, but I want to go back to this slide. Okay, now, sorry about this. Yeah?
Could we have a technician? It's not working at all.
Excellent. I wanted that slide so that I could show my colleague, Maximo Torero, who is actually the theme leader for the work that we do under our consortium research program on linking smallholders with markets. The consortium research program on policies, institutions, and markets covers an enormously broad area of work, but there is one component which is quite substantial. It's led by Maximo, and it addresses precisely the issue which is the subject of our session today, which is how to make innovative opportunities available to smallholders so that they can take advantage of market opportunities. So that is what we're going to be discussing in this brief session. Now, because this is a session that has a P as part of its prefix, we're asked to focus on the issues of partnership. And I do actually welcome the opportunity to explain how within the consortium program on policies, institutions, and markets we work with partners. The program itself has a very broad range of activity. We look at policies and institutions to address better public spending. We look at mechanisms of collective action that are important for actors in the food systems in general. But we do have this important theme on linking smallholders with markets. It's a relatively new program. It was launched in January of 2012. Now, clearly, if we have results and interesting lessons to share with you now, it is because we are benefiting from work that was already ongoing and that has been merged into the activities of the consortium research program. And it's particularly those related to linking smallholders with markets. But we do work with partners. We had reason recently to go through an exercise where we counted all of the partners that we work with, and the count came to over 700. Now, those partners fall into three general categories. We have research partners, and those are partners within the other centers that are part of the CGIAR consortium. And you can see there that almost all of the centers are active in this program because of the breadth of the activity. But we also have many research partners in the universities, in the other institutions of higher learning. Because much of our work is action research, we also have partnerships with farmers' organizations, with community-based organizations, with NGOs, and certainly also with the private sector. And some of the activities that I'm going to be sharing with you in this session are based on partnerships in action research with the private sector. But then we also, very importantly, have our partnerships with the implementing agencies. And again, some of those are farmer organizations, some of those are national programs, some of those are multilateral or bilateral organizations, and again, the NGOs and the community-based organizations. So partnership is a very important part of this program. But I do want to go more directly in a very efficient way to the three examples that I want to share with you. And in the research portfolio of this theme that Maximo leads, we're looking at some of the barriers, some of the constraints that keep smallholders from taking advantage of market opportunities, some of the ways in which markets fail smallholders. And then we try to identify interventions that would address those failures of markets to work with smallholders. And then we experiment with some remedies or interventions that would work to address those failures, and then we incorporate that learning into practical and operational mechanisms that could be scaled up. So one of the programs that I want to share with you has to do with an issue that affected contract farming, and it was particularly in the dairy industry. And this is a failure of markets, a failure of the ability of markets to link smallholder dairy producers to market opportunities. It's been observed in a number of places, but the particular research took place in Vietnam, in Peru, and in Tanzania. And the issue, quite specifically, had to do with the inability of the market to process the information necessary for smallholders to get compensation for delivering good quality milk to the processors. And when the processor was not sure what the quality of the milk was that the smallholder was delivering, then the processor, quite understandably, would only pay for low quality, because that's the least risky proposition. If the smallholders knew that they would only get a low price on the assumption that they had low quality, then they would only deliver low quality, because it takes more resources to deliver higher quality. So this was an informational failure that was interfering with an opportunity that would have benefited both the smallholders and the processors, and that was the ability to get paid consistently for high quality milk. And there was a number of studies in the literature that recognized this problem, but there wasn't really an institutionalized solution for it. So the solution that was designed in an action research project that was undertaken by IFPRI under Maximo's leadership, I believe, looked at a process of putting in place third-party verification of the quality of the milk, with the verification process one that was accepted as trustworthy both by the producers and by the processors. So it was the fact that this was third party and it was trustworthy and accepted by all of the parties in the contracting that was the innovation in this case. And here you can see in this graphic we have the farmer. Actually, it probably should be a female farmer, but in this case the graphic is a male. And we have a cow, and then we have this relationship between the producer and the processor. In this case it's Vina milk. And we have information flowing in one way, we have money flowing in another, and then we have the introduction of the third-party technician down here, the quality verification person, who then allows the consistent improvement in quality and compensation of both parties for the high-quality milk. Now, this was an experiment which was undertaken in a number of venues, and it's I'm not sure to what extent it's being scaled up and built into operational programs, but clearly it's one that's been verified and it has scope for scaling up. Now let me go on to here some of the results. It was a partnership that was built between the producers and a private company, that is the processor. It did deliver benefits. It had benefits for both, and it has scope for scaling up. Now let's go on to another one, which had to do with the opportunities of smallholders to come together for collective marketing of their products, that is, aggregation of product. So aggregation has benefits because it gives the farmers opportunities to bargain better with traders. It has the opportunity to build in quality verification so that one could combine the two kinds of interventions, the one that we saw earlier and then this one. And it has opportunities for shared learning because the producers are together in a group. But there are also costs associated with that. Some of the problems associated with aggregation are that the alternative is for the individual smallholder to sell directly to a trader. In that case, the producer gets a lower price, probably because the bargaining power is not there. The potential for quality assessment is not there. But at the same time, the producer gets paid almost immediately. So there's that advantage. So the innovation here was to see how the producers could aggregate but still get paid and have the advantages of both. And so the intervention was for the group, the farmers' organization in this case, to be able to have a loan from a financial organization which allowed them to give a prepayment to the producers as soon as they delivered to the group, but then at the same time to get a final payment once the negotiated price was agreed with the seller for with the buyer for the aggregated product. So this was an innovation which combined working with a financial institution, supporting farmers' organizations, and still delivering the benefits to the smallholders that they had initially from the direct interaction with the traders. And that was an example that was developed in Uganda. Now, a third example that I'll go through very quickly is one that has been piloted most thoroughly in Ethiopia, but it's also been explored a bit in Bangladesh and India, and I guess here in Uruguay as well. I think Maximo actually had some very interesting information about the experience in Uruguay. So maybe we'll hear about that from some of the people in the group. And this was an innovation to address the fact that weather insurance products are often considered to be very valuable. They have a very clear role in helping smallholders manage risks and shocks that are that originate in weather. But at the same time, some of the instruments of weather insurance are very complicated, and it's difficult for smallholders to understand how they work and to actually express interest in purchasing these products. So the innovation here was something that's basically as simple as, it's like a lottery ticket. And it's a simple piece of paper which farmers in Ethiopia could purchase. And on one side of the ticket, it said, this is worth a certain monetary value. In Ethiopia, it's 100 birr. That was, maybe about $5, actually. So you could denominate these in any number. The farmers could buy as many as they wanted. And then on the back, it had a very simple graphic that explained under what circumstances this lottery ticket would pay. So that if a certain state of the world came about, then the face value was worth 100 birr. If it didn't happen, then the ticket wasn't worth anything. Farmers could understand this. It was introduced at a time when actually it was quite useful. A number of farmers did redeem these, did get the monetary value, and so they saw that it was useful. And it has been picked up by some of the financial and insurance institutions in Ethiopia, and it is being used. So this was an innovation which addressed some of the challenges of having overly complicated instruments to address a very recognized and perceived risk that smallholders faced. And it does have potential for scaling up. It did pay in 2011, in a year when a lot of farmers in Ethiopia did need to have interest, did need to have assistance, and there is interest in using it even more. So I think that is the end of mine. I will go back and leave a preview of the next presentation to my next colleague, but I do thank you for your attention, and I will hope that we have some discussion during the session. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Karen, for that presentation and actually keeping to time. I would like at this stage to actually invite our second speaker, Ruben, from Chile, to also give us insights as to what he has to offer in terms of experiences and other issues coming from his experiences. So, welcome.
Bueno, muy buenas tardes.
Good afternoon.
Bueno, como el tiempo es bastante acotado,
Since time is rather
voy a
limited,
hacer algunos aspectos generales de la empresa a la que yo represento.
make
Yo,
a few
bueno,
general
trabajo en una
comments on the company
agroindustria.
I represent. I
La verdad
work
que la
in
empresa
the
privada
agribusiness.
También puede ser una herramienta y un mecanismo para transferir y para encadenar a los productores, no solamente los organismos gubernamentales. Yo les voy a contar brevemente el programa de Alianza Productiva que se desarrolla en Chile, que es una alianza entre la empresa privada, el gobierno de Chile, el Estado y los productores, pequeños productores fundamentalmente. Para comenzar, algunos aspectos generales de la empresa en la que yo represento, que es Alifruit. Alifruit es una compañía que trabaja fundamentalmente productos congelados. Algunos de ellos pueden ser frutas, productos del mar, alimentos preparados, pero en general productos que se puedan congelar. Ese es nuestro principal trabajo.
Our target market is basically diversified exports. The company has already vast experience in exports. We've been in this business for over 20 years.
Exportamos hacia Estados Unidos, Europa, Japón y otros mercados de Latinoamérica. Ustedes comprenderán que transformar a pequeños productores en el fondo en exportadores es un desafío mayor. Y hemos intentado hacerlo en un proceso que nos ha traído bastantes satisfacciones. El tamaño de la empresa, Alifruit factura algo más de $100 millones anuales.
The company, its turnover is a little over $100 million a year. So within the domestic market and in the Chilean industry, it is quite a large company. Our main commodity requirements relate to fruit, especially strawberries, cranberries, mulberries, strawberries, peas, and other frozen. And I've underlined strawberries there because I will talk about a project we have developed mainly with strawberry producers. And why focus on them? Because those are especially small-scale producers. And as a strawberry provider, we have 800 producers around Chile in the central part of the country and the south. What are the main features of these small-scale strawberry producers? 70% of them are small farmers. They have small farms. They have a low schooling rate. Most of them have only completed their primary school studies. Until this program, their market integration was fairly low, so they produce without actually knowing where to sell. So once they've got the production, they're often left at the mercy of middlemen or unscrupulous purchasers, so they didn't have a business strategy. They have few technical skills, or at least that was the case before the program started. They have poor management skills, no cost analysis as a rule, or profit analysis. They have no idea as to the financial margins inherent in the business. What are the challenges that we are to face with these small farmers? Mainly, we need to meet the needs of international markets. For many years now, Chile has been seeking to diversify its exports. Our products reach many countries, and each country has its own requirements which become increasingly complex over the years as regards both quality and safety. In the case of strawberries, we need to meet these demands with producers like the ones I've described. As a rule, small, with not much schooling and little technical skill, which makes the challenge all the greater. We must implement certification processes, increasingly so because external markets demand certification processes. So we have been working with our producers and will show some of the results we've achieved. In addition, we have to deal with the constant changes in consumer preferences. The international market is changing its demands and needs all the time. So we must not only adapt our production processes, but we must adapt our producers in order for them to meet the needs posed by those changes in the market. So what to do in order to tackle these problems? We need to reach the producers directly. We can't just be fruit purchasing companies. We need to have a commercial and technical link in order to have a constant follow-up of the production quality. And we need commercial linkages. Strawberries actually represent a field that doesn't need much investment or high investment. So producers get into and out of the industry very easily. So a challenge is also to ensure stability over time. Well, it says here that we want permanent producers. So what model am I trying to illustrate here? This is a public-private alliance consisting of three key elements. The government of Chile, through INDAP, the Institute for Agricultural Development, which works mainly with small producers. The second component of the alliance is Alifruit, the private company I represent. In Chile, we have a lot of companies using this arrangement very successfully. And the third key component is the producers, who first need to state their intent and interest to take part in a program such as this one. What is the Productive Alliances program? In a nutshell, it is a co-funded program. It is funded in three ways. One big share comes through INDAP and the government of Chile. Between 50 to 70% of the financing for the program comes from INDAP. And I write this range 50 to 70 because the contributions change from year to year. As a rule, they are decreasing. The first year the government puts more money into it, the next year less, and the company will actually put up more. And the same thing with the producers. The producers also make a contribution to the development of the project. The main objective is to create bonds of trust between producers and companies. As a rule, industry or companies are regarded by producers as a bad ally, so to speak. And through this program, we want to have an alliance based on trust. They are familiar with market aspects that we deal with as a company, so they have access to a transparent price system as well as to transparent commercial conditions, which has a great influence on the bonds of trust created in this model. And also, we overcome technical barriers. When we first started, from a technical perspective, the producers' work was quite poor, but now they have become top producers in the industry. And the top producers then are the ones working under this arrangement. And then the objective is also to have a constant commercial linkage. The current situation of the program with Alifruit is that we have 6 productive alliance groups in Chile with 250 producers working. And in Chile, INDAP has promoted this program. There are 4,000 producers working under this arrangement, and we expect to have 10,000 over the next 2 years. The process will continue to grow to the extent it continues to show such positive outcomes as it has so far. Some outcomes of the program. Just a note, the government of Chile decided to invest in private business as part of this program because INDAP has worked with small farmers for a very long time. But at one point they realized that INDAP and the government invested heavily in producers who then had no appropriate conditions for marketing purposes, so the efforts proved fruitless. So there was a lot of money put into producers who would then walk out of the market. So this was the source of the alliance in order to ensure that the production would not just be good quality, but would also have a viable commercial exit. Some results, we have fairly higher than average production figures nationwide. We could say that our producers have 30% higher yields than the national average. Then there's the development of production value through certification processes, and 20% of the 250 producers are organically certified producers nowadays. This process has increased. Our organic share is particularly important. We have tried to enhance this commercial plus, which also brings more income for the producers. and 25% of our producers have international good agricultural practices certification. This would seem fairly normal when dealing with big companies, but these are small producers. Some of these strawberry producers have 0.5 hectares, so they're very, very small scale. Others have 10 hectares perhaps, they're a little larger, but as a rule they tend to be small scale. And what about the evolution of the linkages? When the program started, we had only 30% of producers selling 50% of production. And today, we are looking at 95%. In other words, the producers, as a result of this fostering of trust, decide to be suppliers of alley fruit and to engage in a relationship with us in the production. Some other results, we have designed long-term policies. We can schedule things better as well, and the producers form organizations and groups, so they don't only deal with us, but also between and amongst themselves. There's the parallel development of other sectors. For example, producers who are today doing strawberries may start working with cranberry or other crops. Some technical instruments we use, and I'm going to rush a bit because I know time is limited, technological tours, training, workshops, field days, seminars, conferences. We have demonstrations or showcase areas. We have lab tests. We work with universities that not only look at the soil of producers, they analyze the water they're using, also from a phytosanitary perspective, and we have on-site presence of company technical specialists in the field all the time. Some final conclusions. The Productive Alliances model benefits farmers and agriculturists because it first makes it possible to include rural family-based agriculture within the new production framework and the export framework, so small producers can also export. It makes it possible to adapt productions to market changes swiftly. Since we are directly in contact with growers, we are aware of their issues, of what they lack, so we can act quickly. And we can also have these productive linkage conditions. The bargaining power of small growers increases. They have larger productive volumes, so they bargain better, and we also have increased technical skill among producers. These aspects have led to an improvement in the quality of life of the parties concerned. And how does it benefit the company? It is important to mention that in order for a productive alliance program to be successful, it has to be mutually beneficial. It's got to be good for alley fruit and for the growers. Otherwise, the program won't work. It makes it possible to design long-term strategies. We can plan things with the producers, we can make investments with them, we can provide them with financial support, we can support them for new crops because we have a bond of trust. The production is in line with international market requirements, and we can better plan productions through these links. So that's it from me. These are the key points of a Productive Alliances program. It must be beneficial to all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Ruben. That is Alliance model, and very exciting, and also very important. And the fact that the model has actually enabled small-scale farmers to get into growing very high-value crops. As you said, it has actually addressed market demands that would actually be beyond the small farmers. And you also have a foresight. I'm sure in future, as you said, your long-term strategy is to get the small-scale farmers organized so that you're actually able to service them better as groups. And I think that is actually very important. I think with that, we have time to really get into that. And I would like to call our third speaker, Lorenzo from Peru. Welcome. So that you can also share with us your experiences.
Buenas tardes. Muchas gracias
Good afternoon.
por la oportunidad
Thank you for this opportunity to share
experiencia
with you
con las
the
organizaciones de
experience
pequeños productores de café.
we have with small coffee producer
Vamos a
organizations.
Cómo es que
We will
hemos desarrollado
tell
un
the
proceso
story of a
mejorar la
process we
producción,
have developed to improve production
investigación,
based on
la
research
cooperación
work
y
involving
esfuerzo de los pequeños productores.
cooperation and efforts by small producers.
Una referencia breve.
So, some brief comments
La Junta Nacional
for background purposes. The National Coffee Board is a small growers organization established 20 years ago. It consists mainly of cooperatives. It groups 55,000 families. Its mission is to represent and defend the interests of members. It provides services for better business and organizational performance of cooperatives in order for them to contribute to improve the living conditions of coffee growing families. One feature of coffee production in Peru is that the yield is very
a los pequeños agricultores en el futuro. Baja productividad de fincas genera, por cierto, inestabilidad económica y social en la economía de los campesinos. No hay relación consistente con el mercado local e internacional. En el caso de Perú, en los últimos años hay una demanda creciente del café peruano que no puede ser abastecido por los pequeños productores. Bueno, los gobiernos no intervienen en innovación productiva de pequeños agricultores, solo para aquellos que tienen capacidad de inversión. La Junta Nacional del Café investiga problemas y asume apoyo a los pequeños productores, buscando su sostenibilidad económica y social, para lo cual define una estrategia y prioriza alianzas con el sector público y privado. Investiga sobre todo experiencias de asistencia técnica en el país y en los países cafetaleros, sus impactos económicos y la viabilidad técnica de los pequeños productores, lo que es posible que los pequeños productores puedan implementar más allá de las expectativas científicas que, por cierto, requiere el cultivo. Este es el cuadro que representa la caficultura peruana al 2012.
Coffee
70%
growing
de los
as of
pequeños
2002.
productores de las
70%
hectáreas
of small
corresponden a 8
coffee
quintales
growers
por
represent
hectárea,
8 quintals
lo que
per
hace
hectare, which
insostenible
makes
en el 70%
it
del área.
unsustainable in 70% of the area. They have no technology.
28% de
That's the
esta
first
área
segment.
tiene un
28%
promedio de
of the
22
area
quintales
has
que
an
podríamos
average of 22
decir que
quintals,
puede
which we could say
resistir las
could
situaciones
resist
de oscilación de precios en
the
el mercado
price
internacional.
fluctuations in the international market.
Y solo el 2%
only
de la
2%
caficultura peruana tiene
of
rendimientos
Peruvian
aceptables de
coffee growing
50
has
quintales por
acceptable
hectárea.
yields of
405,000
per
hectáreas,
hectare.
165,000 familias, un promedio casi de 2.5 hectáreas por familia de pequeños agricultores. Este es un cuadro que mira las áreas y la línea roja es la oscilación de la productividad del café.
Yields or coffee
Ahí
productivity,
miramos
that is.
que
Here you
del
can see
99
from
producido casi 400
1999
kilos por hectárea,
was about 400,000 kilos per hectare. In 2012, we significantly
con graves problemas
improved,
de
but still have
productividad en el
serious
café
productivity
peruano.
problems
Y en este
in
escenario,
Peruvian
las condiciones
coffee
de
production.
pobreza de ingresos
And
de los
against this
pequeños
backdrop,
productores es
the
dramática.
poverty and income situation of the producers
¿Qué hemos
is
hecho?
dramatic. So what have we done?
trabajamos un diagnóstico de
We've
las mejores
worked
prácticas
on
de
a
rejuvenecimiento
diagnosis
de
of
cafetos,
best practices
consiste en
for
aplicación
rejuvenation
adecuada de
of
podas
coffee growing
razón a la
areas,
economía
you know,
de los
doing
campesinos.
the trimming
Diversas prácticas
in
de
accordance with the
manejo
financial
hay
situation of the growers,
podas de
doing
distintas, de altitudes,
different pruning
pisos,
according to the
variedades,
height, to the altitudes, or according to layers, varieties, and we
en función a la
try and
capacidad
single out the
y
most appropriate
emprendimiento del
method. We also look at the indebtedness capacity of the small growers. We worked on an economic viability study with doctoral researchers from the University of Wisconsin dealing with the implementation of appropriate pruning, and these have been specialist and neutral professionals who had high persuasive power for the government and other parties to invest in the field. So we have managed to negotiate a fund involving $12 million for a loan at 10%
que en el horizonte
interest
de
rate
5 años
a year,
consideramos
which
se puede honrar adecuadamente.
over a 5-year horizon we think can
Pero al
be
mismo tiempo hay en Perú un déficit
feasibly
de técnicos
repaid. But
que
we also have a
conozcan
deficit
adecuadamente
in
los
Peru, a lack of
procesos y nos vemos
technical
obligados
specialists
a
who are well aware of the processes, so we've had to undergo training of the specialists who are going to work directly with the growers. We needed to produce technical materials and guides for the small growers to follow, and also ongoing evaluation with the cooperatives in order to assess the pruning processes and the use of fertilizers at the right time. What has been the result of this process? Well, 36 cooperatives involved. Out of 89 coffee cooperatives in Peru, 4,800 producers have benefited from this, 7,000 hectares have been covered, and $8 million in loans. We have $4 million still to be placed. 4 million. By the second year, the growers already increased their harvest from 8 to 15, which has been key in persuading the producers and the financial institutions for them to see that there is no risk if they support this work method. By the third year, they need to have 25 quintals of specially certified coffee, because we are trying to develop this process with sustainable coffee, organic certification, so in accordance with the trends and demands of the market. The experience has a major impact on the farmer or grower population. The growers are now seeking to replicate this process that is underway. Government and bankers take an interest in the experience. Some private bankers have started to look at the possibility of 5-year loans in order to become involved in this kind of activity, which is certainly an encouragement moving forward to bridge the gap of low productivity. IDB agrees to fund technical support for the board aimed at the specialists working for the cooperatives. We've started working on this process since there are positive results clearly, and this builds trust in the process. Some lessons learned from this process. Grower organizations should be willing to link research and other aspects into their association work. This has been key in order to convince government and bankers to invest in supporting the small growers based on viable and reliable alternatives. Specialized research into the problems or constraints in the agricultural activities makes it easier to negotiate public policies. And research must be participatory and involve the beneficiaries in order to report the problems to be faced based on the actual socio-economic circumstances of the growers. This is extremely important because one needs to see what technical capacity can be expected of the growers depending on their cultural background, their Andean origin. Perhaps they've gone to the more tropical, humid areas. One needs to understand the sociological process the growers have gone through. The government gives priority to the requests when they involve realistic, consistent, viable proposals with a short-term policy impact. Government officials don't want projects with results in 10 years' time. They want quick results, which give them, obviously, some political advertising options. And we need financial instruments that make it easier to work proactively as we have here. Our challenges have to do with our negotiation with the government and private bankers for a new credit fund of $50 million to renew 25,000 hectares over a 5-year term, benefiting 20,000 families. And based on this experience, we can expect something quite bold, which is feasible to implement. We are also speeding up the regulation of certified seed production. In Peru, coffee is the leading agro-export product, and we don't have a seed regulation that creates trust in growers for them to buy genetic material with a view to positive results. We need to have trained technical specialists for technical support in plantation management, and this is an objective we have set for the next few years. Also, projects in association with government, regional and national authorities to renew the germplasm of plague-resistant coffee plantations with a view to higher productivity. And of course, there is not good management at present, and we are looking at an alliance between the national government and regional governments, including the producer alliances, to better channel resources. And we also want to link the management of coffee plantations with agricultural management and forestry management in order to alleviate or mitigate the impact of climate change. The idea is for coffee growers to have a sort of life insurance through the agricultural and forestry management. In 20 years' time, we'll have another income in the coffee growing family, which will make it possible to enjoy better conditions. An issue and task to deal with is to optimize the business management of coffee cooperatives. We have made a lot of progress, but there is still a deficit in order to appropriately manage relations with the market, plan production, harvest, quality standards, and marketing standards for coffee. And a strategy for links to the market. In the case of Peruvian producers, requires the development of a collective brand which will create trust in the market so that purchasers will think that coffee offers safe standards, is reliable and consistent in the long term. There are experiences, and that's the work we have set ourselves. This is our slogan: with no coffee, there's no tomorrow. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that was quite good coming from a cooperative movement, and so very good experiences, and especially, you know, the partnership, some kind of innovative platform with different partners and players on board. You know, the bankers, the government, you know, and other players. And I think that is a very interesting model, and it has actually worked. But as you indicated, there is actually still more work to be done. And as we are talking, you mentioned about money and lending, but I didn't hear anything about small farmers being asked to produce correctors, you know, the title deeds and other certificates, meaning that the power of being together as a cooperative has worked. It has actually provided that surety that the small farmer requires. And it actually gives him confidence in getting engaged in this kind of arrangement. So thank you very much. I think we'll get into it later as we get to discussion. We proceed, and our next speaker is Ton from Wagner University. Again, let's hear from you and share your experiences. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm very happy that GFAR or GCARD has invited us to present these experiences of a program that wants to experiment with an approach for farmer-driven research for advocacy. It's a program that initiated in 2007 in response to demand by the International Federation of Agricultural Producers, IFAP. And SFIM was meant to give research support to IFAP on issues related with markets and especially on policies and institutions that define the space of smallholders in markets. Not on production issues, not on climate change, but specifically on issues of institutions in markets that time after time kept as the principal issue for smallholder farmers organizations. Therefore, SFIM was not only to support staff in the headquarters, but by especially to work together with their members of IFAP in articulating their demands and proposals with a bottom-up perspective. However, IFAP was dissolved in 2010, tragically, by a bankruptcy. Meanwhile, AgriNatura, which is the platform of research institutes in Europe, is in charge of the administration of the program. However, the intention is to make the program again farmer-led, also at the programmatic global level in the future. A new platform on the global level is necessary, but still needs time to develop organically. The 10 national farmer organizations where we started to work with continued to do so in the second phase from 2010 to 2012 with the financing of IFAD in Rome and the Dutch government. We work in 10 countries, 5 countries in Africa, 4 in Latin America and 1 in Asia. In Latin America, it's the coffee union Junta Nacional de Café, which presented already. In Bolivia, the Coordinadora de Integración de Organizaciones Económicas Campesinas, which is a smallholder farmers organization, with the cooperative movement here in Uruguay, CAF, will going to present also this afternoon. And in Costa Rica with a network of women groups. In Africa, we had also, the intention was to have a presentation from Africa, but he cancelled because of visa problems. In Africa, we work with, in Benin with FUPRO, with the Smallholders Federation NASFAM in Malawi, UNF in Uganda, KENFAP in Kenya, and the CPM is the Coalition of Farmer Movements of Madagascar. And in Asia with the Free Farmers Federation. We have a major objective in supporting the voice of national farmers' organizations in policy making on smallholder market access. And from the roadmap, the GCARD roadmap perspective, we also have an objective to bridge the gap between two cultures that have difficulties in relating with each other, the research community and the farmers' organizations. What are the structuring elements of these two different cultures? Research institutes tend to value two things. You get status through peer-reviewed articles, or you get status by managing big research budgets. And the two issues tend not to be present in the live worlds of farmers' organizations. They have little money to spend, and they are not very much interested in research methods, but only in findings, and especially findings that can be used to influence policymakers. There's newspapers and not scientific articles. And worse, farmer organizations tend to function in an extremely dynamic and demanding context that makes that their advocacy needs and therefore also their demand for research support and evidence is rapidly changing. It makes it difficult for them to concentrate during a large period on the same issues. While that is exactly where we as researchers dream about, have sufficient time to plan thoroughly our research to make it fit in our busy schedules. And we definitely cannot cope very well with the changes in the terms of references during the research period, while farmers' organizations need these adjustments, for instance, changing dates for workshops, etc., to adapt to the flexibility, to the dynamics in their country. Nevertheless, there are also positive points where we can build and where we are trying to build on our efforts. Farmer organizations are well aware of their lack of skills to grasp with all existing evidence and research and to digest the research. However, even when they have money to spend on it, they tend to be short in funding because they have many other activities too, and therefore are very much unwilling to pay much for research or consultancies. They can hire necessary technical staff to provide services to their members for long periods instead of spending the same amount of money on several days of external consultants. Thus, these inherent tendencies in both cultures leads to two things. One, everybody sees it as a problem and wants to resolve it, at least that's what the discourse is and what's part of the roadmap. And second, the real experiences in doing it, in making research farmer-led, are still very, very limited. So what are we doing? SFIM is a pilot experience, as I already indicated. It's a small program, just 2 million in a 5-year period. And most of our budget is spent on collaborative research, where research priorities are defined by the national farmers' organizations in each country. And in the last 2 years, they had a budget of more or less $40,000 each to spend on activities that they prioritized. We had also a component of comparative research, which was done on issues that emerged from IFAP in the early stage of the program, and were defined on an international conference in Tunis in 2007. We worked on 4 themes to make policy briefs about the current state of thinking on risk insurance, on innovative financial models, incentives, market information systems, and on resolving the challenges of collective marketing. Another output of this last theme is a website, which we are now creating and trying to fill with organizational intelligence of farmers' organizations to resolve these challenges. This is the website. Nobody must look now on it, but later on I hope. The themes that we were working on, or have been working on in the countries were very different. In the Philippines was more on commodity exchange, the Malawi on seed supply, market information system, etc. Input voucher programs, the NADS system in Uganda. But there is some unity in that diversity. There is a group of issues that work on institutions in markets to make markets more efficient. There is a group of key issues that were prioritized that had to do with service provisioning to farmers. And there is a theme on the challenges of collective marketing through associate production, cooperatives, etc. What are the lessons learned? We've learned some lessons that we can use to refine the approach of SFIM to link research with advocacy. First, you need a process of participative process of consultation. But it's not enough. You need to go beyond a wish list of issues and connect to the farmers' organization existing and past advocacy trajectories to define the key issues. This showed in the process the importance of systemizing the advocacy process in those organizations. Most organizations have regular changes of leadership, often have a high turnover rate of professional staff, and this easily leads to the discontinuing of efforts or the loss of knowledge about the political play where the advocacy and proposals are being discussed. We also experience the value of other support initiatives, especially the ones that help the organizational strengthening and service provisioning, because with these immediate needs served in the organization, there proved to be more space and political will to invest in research. We also saw that some consultancy took a lot of time, partly because the farmer organizations did not press them enough to deliver. Advocacy events were very useful to speed up the research output. However, the same speed sometimes hindered the depth of the analysis. This re-emphasized the two tracks that have to be developed, a track with short-term research support on timely issues, and another track with deeper analysis on issues that are likely to be of mid-term interest of the organization. Two other points proved important in the process. There was a delicate balance between funding internal staff and contracting external research support, and the balance between wider consultation and centralized strategizing. As a researcher, a team of 8 from CIRAD, NRI and Wageningen University, we regularly evaluated the process and saw signs of unbalance on these latter 2 points in some of the countries. In Kenya, for example, the process was too much driven by internal staff and resulted in little new linkages with external research, while, for instance, in Uruguay and Malawi, the role of external researchers was perhaps too dominant than we ideally would have seen. The same on the issue of central versus decentralized processes. Some organizations tended to deviate from what we saw as a sort of ideal type of SFIM process. We did also some work to assess the impact of our program in the organizations. We did several tools, and one of them was a self-assessment tool. Another one was a round of interviews with external stakeholders working in the area of agriculture policy. And we operationalized the concept of advocacy capacity in 5 different elements. One, the capacity for coherence, to make a strategy, the capacity to network, the capacity to renew, the capacity to commit and act, and the capacity to deliver. And we had an internal self-reflection session on those 5 capacities, and you see that not all those countries, or that from the self-assessment came some strengths and weaknesses in the advocacy strategy of each of the organizations, which helped them to change their internal organization on advocacy. What's the way forward? For the next phase of SFIM, we see 3 modifications related with the funding structure of the activities in each country. And we plan separate funding lines to resolve the tension between consultation processes and external, internal activities and external research support. We propose a research support fund, 2 funds that have a clear advocacy plan, but that at the same time can be flexibly adapted when the dynamics change. And we need time to have regular interactions between researchers and the farmers' organizations to build trust in each other. Trust by researchers in the process of advocacy, and trust in farmers' organizations in the value of research and evidence to improve their advocacy strategy. What do we need? We need money. SFIM is finalizing its 2nd phase this year and needs funds to invest in those research support funds, a process to facilitate good proposals, funds to exchange experiences between the countries on the regional and continental levels, and budget to get backstopping capacity. And referring back to the budget, it was $2 million spent on 10 national farmers organizations. Though it was a cheaper program, but we really need funding for getting this further. We are looking for funding partners, and we hope that this approach to work closely with farmers organizations can be mainstreamed in the GCARD process and agenda for the coming years. What do we offer? We offer our experiences with a smart and flexible modality to channel research demands from farmer organizations to the research community. And we have a team of committed researchers to provide backstopping. We have gained knowledge on a wide range of policy issues that are relevant for smallholder access to markets. And most important, we have a coalition of 15 national farmers organizations and 3 regional networks in Africa willing to deepen and scale up these initial experiences with the SFIM approach. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that was quite nice, capacity building. A process that was really diverse, touching on very many different countries and regions that are very different, dealing with issues that are actually important in their work, and especially having researchers on board to assist producer organizations develop capacity to be able to put together advocacy messages that are actually evidence-based, because it works better when you actually have properly packaged lobby messages. Because to farm organizations, I think lobbying is actually a very important process. So we have decided that we stop at those presenters now. We can pick on the remaining ones immediately after coffee, at least to reduce boredom. I think we have getting them seats together is a bit difficult, but I think it's okay. So at this stage, we are actually going to open this phase to questions coming from you, so that you can actually be able to raise issues, comments, add value to different presentations, seek clarification where necessary, and actually help us actually move forward. And I would like to request that you are as focused as possible in comments or questions, so that we can actually be able to accommodate as many of you as possible, because we actually got about 20 minutes to do that. So we have at least a roving microphone. Yeah, it's actually there. Microphone is actually there. Okay, yeah. And once we have you mention your name and your organization, and you put forward the question. Okay, we have the gentleman right there.
Hi. Is that working? My name is Craig Jameson. I'm from the World Agroforestry Center. A lot of these enabling environments for smallholders tend to be based around developing farmers groups and cooperatives. In the Philippines, where I live, it seems to have a dismal record. The track record is that a lot of them are defunct. They've fallen apart. There's been misappropriation of funds. Often they've just, people even who have been managing the cooperatives have gone off with the money and taken a long holiday or something. It's just fallen apart. So if you could give one piece of advice, if you're trying to set up a cooperative in that kind of an environment, what would your one piece of advice be to overcome those kind of problems?
Okay, that is a question on governance of cooperatives and transparency. Now, so let's panelists, you just pick issues, and we'll give you time to actually respond. Okay, we have a young man across there. Welcome.
I am H.S. Gupta from India. My question is to Mr. Castillo, who presented a story on coffee. I want to know from him, what is the method or what is the arrangement made to pay back the $12 million, $10 million loan which has been taken? And especially the rate of interest seems to be very high for agriculture sector. This could have been negotiated to be at lower level also, 4% or 5%.
Yeah, that is, the question is really targeted. I hope you got it. So let's have at least two more. We have, okay, down there. Welcome.
Okay, I'm Chris Makolo. I work for an international NGO based in Nairobi. I have questions for Karen and for the gentleman from Chile. For Karen, it's about aggregation of product, aggregation of milk. and the challenges you think the community face in terms of ensuring quality, because you collect from individuals and then you bring them at a central collection point. To what extent does a person who delivers good quality milk suffer as a result of another person who doesn't have good quality milk? For the presentation from Chile, I didn't get it clear about the kind of support that your company gives to the farmers and whether you charge them for the support that you provide for them. And secondly, to what extent is the cultivation of mulberry and strawberry interfere with food crop production? Because we have realized that in certain situations, when small-scale farmers are encouraged to engage in cash crop production, food security and food sovereignty tend to suffer. And therefore, they use the money that they get from participating in the market to purchase food which they would otherwise have produced by themselves. Thank you.
Yeah, we can be able to handle one more, and then we get to Peter. Anything on the web stream?
Thank you. From the online public, I had two questions. One question was for Karen, if she could explain what the actual outcomes, expected outcomes could be or would be from her CRP. It wasn't clear apparently what people can expect as an outcome, practical outcome from the CRP. The second question was on facilitating organizations that can link farmers with markets. There was a question from a farmer working with others in a cooperative in the north of Mali who saw a market in Burkina Faso. So he didn't really know if there are organizations he can turn to or where to turn to actually find a way to connect him to markets. Yeah? Thank you. The first comment was for Karen to explain what her CRP was about and what the expected outcomes could be. Specifically in market access for smallholders.
So one of the questions coming from the web might require any one of us. I think this farmer in Mali is looking for cross-border market, and how to get there is a problem. Anybody with an idea as to how we should advise that this cooperative or this farm actually gets around it to be able to access that market that is actually across and is there? Any ideas from the panelists, participants? Okay, Ron, you want to comment on that? Yeah.
I'd like to use that question to also answer the first question about what's the one advice about farmers' organizations. I think it's very important that farmers' organizations have the lead in their own organization. So the big advice for me would be don't make them, but let them make themselves and help them to develop. In the SFIM program, we worked with established farmers' organizations, so they are already there. So we helped to strengthen their abilities. But my advice in situations where there is no farmer organizations is very much a bit linked to Karen's comment. Collective action needs a lot of effort and a lot of money. So don't do it if you don't think pays off.
Okay, now on the same question on cross-border trade, I think in West Africa we have a regional farm organization, ROPA. And I would advise the questionnaire to actually link up with ROPA. ROPA is actually based in Ouagadougou. It connects about 13 countries in West Africa as a network. And probably we could actually have a way of actually going around it, because they also sit in ECOWAS, that is actually a regional REC, and I'm sure they discuss regional markets. And this particular question actually targets a market that is actually in the same region. So I think, again, that is another way of actually going around it. I think through Europa there could actually be some answers and solutions actually coming out. So I think with that we get to our panelists. There are questions. Let me start from my right. Yeah, there was a question to Chile. Okay, just yeah.
¿No? Ok. Bueno, hay dos preguntas en las que puedo aportar algo, creo yo. Primero, con respecto a las cooperativas y cómo han funcionado a lo largo del mundo. Mencionaba alguien recién que en Filipinas había un largo historial de cooperativas que no funcionaron. La verdad que en Chile también hay un historial largo de cooperativas que no llegaron a buen término, en las que se invirtió mucho dinero y que finalmente fracasaron. ¿Cómo hacerlo?
So how to go about it, that's tough. Essentially, it's not just about delivering resources to a cooperative or group of individuals or farmers. You need to carry out a close follow-up. In Chile, the agency in charge of financing and giving grants to the cooperatives is the INDAP, the National Agricultural Development Institute. And after a long history of failures, they are closely monitoring producers. They don't just give them access to the funds, but also make sure that the funds are used appropriately. There has to be a commitment on the part of the government itself for this to work. As to the other question regarding the support given by the company to the producers or to the growers, and if the company charged anything, actually the program is co-funded by the government of Chile, the companies, and the producers. During the first year, the producers don't fund anything. The financing of the technical program, the whole technical package that has to do with the professionals, the technical visits, the training and seminars, all of that is looked at by the government, which contributes up to 70%, and the industry normally puts up 30% during the first year. Now, starting in the second year, the producer, if happy with the program and wishing to stay in it, they contribute 5% of the total. So it is not a contribution made directly to the company by the producer, but to the enhancement of the program. Normally the producers, without having to actually put funds, they still make contributions because they travel by bus or even in the trucks to attend the meetings, and we also compute that as a contribution on their part. And the support we give specifically includes an agreement we sign with the producers every year. We provide for volumes and purchase conditions. And this proves very useful because that way we can appropriately plan what production we're going to receive, and they get peace of mind in terms of what they're going to get. We don't have indiscriminate producer development. When we have producers in productive alliances, we encourage their growth to the extent that we have the ability as an industry to purchase that increased production volume. So what the system does here is favor the conditions of producers in the alliance, but the ones outside of this arrangement are not favored. So we give priority to those who work with us and those that we are developing as producers. I wonder if that answers the question.
Yeah, before I get to my friend Lorenzo, I would like to, there's a question that actually came on collective action, especially on bulking. And I would like this one to be at least responded to by Robin and also Lorenzo, because I think their cooperative is actually dealing with collective action. Situations where, standards are actually sacrificed, and whether there are actually mechanisms to actually address that, so that the real good producers who present quality produce are not scared away. So I think it's important for the audience or for the questionnaire to actually get at least an insight on the kind of mechanism you actually have to make sure that you encourage quality, either through incentives, and you safeguard against deterioration of quality in your bulks that might actually lead to low prices from the market. So I think for Robin and Lorenzo, these are good questions, and it's good to actually know from you exactly how you deal with that.
Okay. En el caso fundamental de la frambuesa, y también lo harán,
in the case of strawberry and cranberries, essentially, after a long process involving rather erratic purchases, for the last 3 years we've been purchasing by quality. In the case of strawberries, we have two standards that apply to the frozen product. One is a block and the other one is the SLF. There's differential payment. The producers that have the best quality of fruit get better income for their products. This way we encourage those who don't have very good quality to work more intensively in improving the quality. We think that's a fair way to pay, because as I say, in the past we bought from the network the production, so every producer got the same for the fruit regardless of quality. But now we are purchasing based on a quality analysis, and it's economically a lot more profitable to work with producers that have good quality of fruit. Now, obviously, through our technical assistance and advice in the field, producers will improve their quality. So it's shared responsibility on our part and on the part of the producers.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much.
Interesantes preguntas y vamos a
We've got some interesting questions we'll try and answer.
Primero hacer un comentario
I would first like to make a comment on the cooperative organization, and then make a few comments on the nature of the financial cost within the framework of this loan for small coffee growers. In Peru, we'll be talking about the last 20 years in the coffee growing sector. In the Peruvian agricultural sector, we had a crisis among the cooperatives, which were dismantled for many factors. And in the last 20 years, cooperatives that survived terrorism, in the case of coffee, they survived the economic adjustments and the depression in international market coffee prices. So we had 11 cooperatives left in 1996, 8 or 9. And those remaining cooperatives got together and came up with a strategy which was either to survive or die. In other words, go into liquidation. So in order to survive, the following criteria were set. One is that the cooperatives have to be very bold in their relations with the market, and in their relations with the market, and to create trust with their producers, they considered vital to identify in the Peruvian supply a quality coffee among the cooperatives. In other words, that coffee from cooperatives is a synonym of quality. Secondly, cooperatives had a poor image, and they had to develop an efficient and transparent business strategy that was also competitive. Efficient in that it must yield results for the producer, for the partner. It's got to be transparent because it's got to inform with regard to the management of the funds, of the resources, in order to create trust with the members. And also it's got to be efficient because it will have to compete with the whole market scenario. If it fails to meet those requirements, the cooperative disappears. And there are further elements.
Para estas cooperativas,
for these cooperatives,
forma de organización es voluntaria.
Their method of organization is voluntary.
Libre adhesión.
It's free membership in order to both enter and exit the cooperative at the time deemed fit by the member.
Y entonces, otro elemento que ha generado
another factor that despite the unfavorable state of cooperatives, the hostile business environment to cooperatives, or the hostile ideology, how come we gone up from 12 to 89 cooperatives in Peru? How come that from 8,000 members, we've now increased to 55,000? If there is no private organization or public organization that promotes cooperatives, it's been a trust-based process based on results. Neighbors would see that their other neighbors had better prices, that they had technical support, and better products. The cooperatives got better prices on the market based on quality and on the trust with regard to the market. And why cooperatives and not other associations? Because cooperatives gave this feeling of co-ownership as regards the contributions. So they felt that they were part of the process. But in the associations, there was no financial ownership. And there's this democratic exercise in the control of cooperatives through management councils, control bodies, which somehow make it possible to dispel any doubts. So today, we have a growing move towards cooperatives, but seeking to ensure that cooperatives, in the case of coffee, cooperatives have at least 100 members. And why 100? Because that way you can have an economy of scale, you can pay for a manager, you can pay for a management body that will provide technical administrative support. Because if you don't have management in the organization, there will be no efficiency, it won't work, and there will be no results. As part of this long process in Peru, cooperatives in all valleys have become price regulator mechanisms in favor of the producers, both member and non-member producers. So those who want to buy coffee in the open market have to pay the same price or higher prices than those of cooperatives. So this obviously is a great contribution to the economy of farmers. And now we are setting about the task of improving productivity. We have actually increased by 10%, and when we looked at a government fund, that the interest rate we're talking about seemed manageable for two reasons. First of all, because of the certainty that we would be increasing productivity and we would have production that would make it possible to pay. And back then in 2009 in Peru, the interest rates for small farmers were between 30 and 40%. So we considered that it would be possible to repay those loans, which are paid over a 5-year term with 2 years of grace and 3 years to actually pay, and the producers are paying back these loans, and our expectation is for these loans to extend to other producers because we need to increase production. There are other crops in Peru, other agricultural activities, which enjoy 5% on their loans. We coffee growers are being punished, but we're going to fight for even better conditions.
So thank you. According to Lorenzo, days when coffee business was protected actually gone, meaning that there's no protection. And to survive as a coffee cooperative, you have to be efficient. There is trust. And then you actually brought up the issue of your business model, meaning that there is actually ownership. And because of your collective action, there are benefits spilling over to even non-members in terms of price setting. I think that is actually quite interesting. So there's a question that came from the web for Karen, and I would like to invite you to respond.
I believe I had two questions, and I thank you very much for those. One had to do with the issue of quality verification and aggregation, and I think that is a very good question. It was actually a point, I believe. The observation that one would have to make is that the quality assessment has to be done prior to aggregation. Otherwise, if you aggregate products of unknown quality, then you're causing quite a bit of difficulty. In the dairy case, the quality verification was definitely at the individual level as the producer was selling to the processor. But there are other products for which it's possible for a group to do an internal enforcement of quality just through visual observation, and to assure that the producers are delivering product of a certain quality, and then as an aggregated body they can confirm that quality and then bargain for a better price. I think cotton, traditionally has been that sort of a commodity. Anything where the important dimensions of quality can be ascertained visually or through the instruments that are within the control of the group. But you're absolutely right to point out that nobody would want to aggregate prior to quality verification if the verification should be done at the individual level. So thank you for noting that point. Now, there was also a question as to what are the practical products that we expect out of the consortium research program on policies, institutions, and markets. And I really welcome that question. As the new director of the program, that's a question that I ask myself quite regularly, because we do have to make sure that we are delivering what the CG mandate is, that is science for a food secure future. So we're looking for very practical products that will come out of our research that can be applied in order to be of use to smallholders and to different agents within the food system. Now, particularly in this area of the theme related to markets and linking smallholders to markets, as we review the existing portfolio, we note that there's a lot of work that is taking place in the general area of value chains. I reported on some of the existing work which is ongoing in the portfolio and some of the practical results that is coming from that work. But we have a larger body of work, and what we have reflected as we look at that work is that each individual piece is very valuable, but there is very little standardization of the research. The research teams tend to define their own issues from the context in which they're working. In many cases, they invent their own vocabulary for describing what they see and for the problem that they are addressing. The definition of what's a value chain, where does it start, where does it end, what is the geographic scope of the value chain is not standardized. And then the different links in the value chain are also not often as clear as they might be. In that environment, when one does action research to intervene in a value chain in order to learn lessons about how it can be strengthened, it's very difficult to learn lessons across the different research products because everything is so unique. And that makes it difficult for researchers to learn from each other, for results to be generalized, and for advice to be provided to agents in the food system who might want to use this work. So one of the very practical things that we're hoping to do within this theme is to achieve a bit more standardization so that we can learn more across this body of work and develop those very practical understandings of, different interventions at different stages lead to what results and what conclusions can we make so that those conclusions can be generalized and be of more use to both the research community and the practitioners. So that's just one example.
Ron, you have something? You want to add something to that? Okay, very short, huh?
Now, I think it's very important that there is more research on smart technologies, institutions, to facilitate the linkage of smallholder farmers to markets. And there is a need for policies that scale that up, that make it scalable, that a lot of farmers, instead of some pilot projects, have benefits of it. And I think the farmers' organizations are needed to have a critical appraisal of those policies and need to have the possibilities to have from their perspective, a proactive stance in policy formulation or market access institution.
Yeah, very good. I think we have actually had a response. We cannot be really exhaustive because we still have to proceed. I would like at this stage to invite you for a cup of tea, coffee, 5 minutes, and then we come back and proceed. If we can actually be able to get through the few presenters remaining, we'll actually open space for more interaction. So 5 minutes, okay?
You're welcome to go and get your coffee and bring it back in here. You don't, you don't have just to go out there. Yeah. So it's 5 minutes to go get a coffee, have a quick break, but we come back in 5, 7 minutes so we can continue with the program.